My family ignored my 30th birthday, then my mom looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Why would we celebrate someone who has nothing to show for her life?" I laughed. Because I'd just bought the building her precious boutique was renting. Rent tripled the next month. She called me screaming. I sent her a receipt. I, 30 female at the time, now 31, was always the outlier in my family. The black sheep, though not in the dramatic, run away to join the circus kind of way. More like quiet, academic, tech-minded, not into appearances or small-town hierarchy, all the things my family obsessed over. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and for those unfamiliar with it, it's beautiful, yes, but also old money, image-obsessed, and socially exhausting. My family fits that mold to a T. My mother, Genevieve, yes, she insists on being called that, runs a boutique in the French Quarter called Blush Plus Fern. If you're from Charleston, you've probably walked past it. It's one of those places that sells high-end linen dresses and $85 soy candles. You get the picture. My father, Howard, is mostly quiet, the kind of man who prefers accounting ledgers over people. He invested in the boutique when I was a teenager. My sister Elise, 34 female, is the golden one. She's married to a well-off plastic surgeon, has 2 picture-perfect kids, and runs a curated lifestyle Instagram account where she calls herself a momtrepreneur, though I don't think she's ever held a job that didn't come from our parents' connections. Me? I work in tech. I don't really advertise what I do, and that's fine by me. It's complicated, software systems, blockchain integrations, and a lot of terms that make people's eyes glaze over. After college at Clemson, I moved to Atlanta for a few years, worked at a couple of startups, and came back to Charleston when I started remote consulting. I liked being near the ocean again. I bought a modest condo near East Bay Street, not too fancy, but mine. That's part of why this story still sits in my chest like a lead weight. See, birthdays were always a big deal in our family growing up. My mom lives for them, big brunches, curated charcuterie boards, 3-tier cakes. Elise's 30th birthday was like a royal affair. Custom-printed wine labels. Gold leaf on everything. I remember the cake alone cost more than my monthly rent back then. So, I expected something. Not a full spread, not a parade. But maybe a text? A call? Anything? Nothing. On the morning of my 30th birthday, I texted the family group chat. Just a simple, "Hey everyone, turning the big 3 to 0 today. Hope you're all well," kind of message. No response. Not even a thumbs up. I thought maybe they were planning a surprise, silly of me, in hindsight. Around 5 p.m., after a quiet day working and treating myself to cupcakes and takeout sushi, I decided to stop by the family home. I still had a key. I wasn't planning a dramatic confrontation or anything, I just missed them. I missed feeling like I was part of something. When I pulled into the driveway, there were cars everywhere. Balloons. I could hear kids laughing and smell grilled shrimp from the sidewalk. I walked in and saw everyone gathered in the backyard: Elise, Terrence, her husband, my nieces, my parents, and a few family friends. There were decorations and a giant banner that said "Happy 4th birthday, Beau." That's Elise's youngest. Okay. I get it. It was his birthday. I hadn't remembered. It happens. But as I stood there in the doorway, awkward and unnoticed, my mom walked past and finally looked up. She blinked. "Oh," she said. "I thought you were out of town." "I live 10 minutes away," I replied, trying to smile. She frowned. "Well, we're celebrating Beau today. I turned 30 today." She stared at me for a beat and then, flatly, "Why would we celebrate someone who has nothing to show for her life?" Just like that. No warmth. No apology. I wish I could say I walked out in a fury or delivered some clever line. But I just stood there for a moment and then, laughed. Because that morning, before I texted them, before I cut into my little grocery store cupcake, I had signed paperwork that would change everything. You see, I had been quietly investing. Between my job, consulting gigs, and early investments in a few crypto projects, I'd done okay. More than okay. I never bragged because I knew what kind of reaction it would get from my family, a mix of confusion and disdain. So, I just kept quiet. And then one day, while scanning commercial real estate listings, my nerdy hobby, I saw that the building housing Blush Plus Fern was for sale. Off-market. The owner, an elderly man named Patrick, had been my mom's landlord for over 17 years. He was retiring and liquidating quietly. His niece was handling the sale. Long story short, I made an offer through a shell LLC and kept my identity hidden until the paperwork was finalized. Charleston's real estate isn't cheap, but I had the funds, and I knew it was a good investment. The boutique was barely scraping by, but the location was golden. That deal closed 3 hours before I walked into that backyard. So, when my mom looked me in the eye and said I had nothing to show for my life, I smiled. Because I owned the building she was standing most days of the week. I was her landlord now. Still, I said nothing. The new lease agreement was sent the next week. Rent went from a sweetheart legacy rate of $2,400 per month to $7,000, still under market, but a major jump. There was also a maintenance clause, which meant she'd be responsible for wear and tear, not the building owner. I gave her 45 days to sign or vacate. The call came exactly 6 days later. She was livid. "You bought the building?" she screamed. "Hi Mom," I replied. Calm. Dry. "You bought it? Without telling me? What kind of sickness, what kind of child does that to their mother?" "A child who owns real estate," I said, and then, because I couldn't help myself, "I guess I do have something to show for my life." She didn't respond right away. Just breathing. Then, in a lower voice, "You've always been jealous of Elise." That was when something in me snapped. The years of being ignored, belittled, overlooked, they crystallized into a quiet kind of power. "No," I said. "I've just never needed you." She hung up on me. Elise texted a few hours later. "Mom is crying. Are you really going to force her out of the shop?" I didn't reply. I emailed a PDF of the lease agreement and a scanned copy of the deed. No threats. No explanations. Just, effective December 1st. Please respond with intent to renew or vacate. The screaming stopped after that. They didn't renew. The boutique shut down quietly that January. A small sign went up thanking loyal patrons and blaming the economy for the closure. I never spoke up. Never corrected her. The space is now occupied by a little artisan bakery run by a couple from Asheville. They make the best cardamom buns I've ever tasted. Sometimes I stop by on Saturdays, and the owners wave. They don't know who I am. They just know I believed in their vision enough to give them a chance. My mom hasn't spoken to me since. But sometimes, late at night, I'll open the deed again on my computer. Not out of spite. But as a reminder, I'm not invisible. I'm not worthless. I'm not empty-handed. Some receipts just take longer to send. I kept mostly to myself in the months after the boutique closed. I knew the fallout wasn't just going to be a dramatic phone call and some snide texts from Elise. The silence from my family became louder, if that makes any sense, more pointed. Elise stopped sending pictures of the kids. My dad, who was never the warmest man but still managed the occasional "hope you're well" email, went quiet too. It was like I had disappeared. Or worse, like I had never really belonged. But I also started to feel something I hadn't in a long time: relief. I didn't grow up in poverty. Not even close. But the pressure in my family was suffocating in a different way. I could never be enough. Not smart enough in the right ways, not attractive in the family's carefully curated way, not ambitious in the publicly presentable sense. My mom used to say Elise had natural polish and I had quiet potential, which was just code for hide her in the back row. My sister had grown into that role so fully that she didn't even question it. She absorbed all the attention, all the family resources. The way my parents doted on her, propped her up, covered for her during every minor crisis. It was like watching someone live in a completely different house even though we grew up under the same roof. When I got my first job in Atlanta, I remember the only gift my mother gave me was a copy of Southern Living with an apartment feature circled in Sharpie. "Maybe if you make enough money one day, you can live somewhere like this," she'd said, all sweet and condescending. I never forgot that. So now, owning that building, the one her precious boutique occupied for almost 2 decades, became more than an investment. It was a reckoning. But the guilt crept in anyway. I'd wake up some mornings and question whether I'd gone too far. Whether I could have handled it differently. Whether it really was about revenge. Or worse, about proving something I never needed to prove in the first place. I started therapy not long after. I remember telling my therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Doreen, about the incident with my birthday, the comment my mother made, and the real estate purchase. After a long pause, Doreen asked, "What did you want your mother to say when you told her it was your birthday?" I thought for a moment. "Just anything," I said. I wanted her to acknowledge me. That I existed. That I mattered. Have you ever gotten that from her? No, she nodded and scribbled something in her notes. You can spend your whole life trying to make someone see your worth, she said, or you can walk away and invest in the people who already do. That hit me hard. And it also made me realize that I hadn't invested much in anyone lately. Not really. I'd spent so long working, proving, climbing. Always on the outside looking in, of my family, of social circles, of relationships. I'd been in a few, but none that lasted. I always told myself I didn't need anyone, that people were distractions, that emotions were liabilities. But maybe, I thought, I'd just been waiting for them, my family, to finally fill that space, to choose me. And they weren't going to. Not ever. So I made a quiet decision: if they were going to cut me out, I wasn't going to beg to be let back in. I'd build my own life. My own people. My own traditions. That decision changed more than I expected. The bakery tenants invited me to their one-year anniversary celebration. They'd expanded into a weekend coffee pop-up and wanted to thank everyone who'd helped them get started. I went, and they handed me a little gift bag with a thank you card and a box of lemon shortbread cookies. "You believed in us when no one else did," the wife said, hugging me. It took everything in me not to cry right then. I started spending more time at the local co-working space, striking up conversations, connecting with people who didn't know my family, who didn't see me through that old Charleston lens. I met Nora, a graphic designer who eventually became one of my closest friends, and Louis, a guy in data analytics who was so effortlessly kind it unnerved me at first. It was like learning how to be visible again, but on my own terms. And then, just when I thought I had fully cut the cord, Elise showed up. Unannounced. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was at home, halfway through a Zoom call, when I heard the buzzer. When I saw her through the security camera feed, umbrella dripping, face tense, I felt my stomach drop. She hadn't contacted me in months. Not even after the boutique closed. Not when our dad had a minor health scare. Not for Thanksgiving. Not for Christmas. Nothing. I muted my call, threw on a hoodie, and buzzed her in. She stepped into my condo like she was stepping into enemy territory. I scanning everything, my decor, my furniture, the minimalist wall art. Judging, as always. "Nice place," she said, voice sharp. I didn't respond. "Just wait." She sighed, pulling off her soaked coat. "I didn't come here to fight." "Then why did you come?" There was a long pause. Her eyes darted away. For once, she looked uncomfortable. "Mom's been depressed," she said finally. "She barely leaves the house. She ran a boutique for 17 years. She knows how leases work." Elise flinched, then sat down without being invited. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees like she was about to deliver bad news. "She says you wanted to punish her." "I wanted a fair deal. She got sweetheart rent for nearly 2 decades. It wasn't sustainable. She thinks you've been waiting to take her down." I laughed. Not out of joy, just disbelief. I've spent my entire life trying to earn her approval. Buying that building was the first thing I did for me. Elise looked away again. She didn't argue. And then she said something I didn't expect. "She always compared us," she whispered. "Said I was the one with the good hair, the smile, the marketability. But she was scared of you. Because you didn't need her." That silenced me. She used to say, "Isla will leave us behind one day. Just wait." Elise looked back at me. "Maybe that's what you were always supposed to do." For a moment, we just sat there. Two sisters. Neither winners. Neither enemies. Just women who'd grown up in the same house but lived completely different lives. "You didn't come here to ask me to fix it," I said slowly. "No," she replied. "I came to understand." And for the first time in years, I let myself believe she might actually mean it. She stayed for tea. That surprised both of us. I made jasmine, because it was the only kind I had on hand that wasn't aggressively caffeinated or medicinal. We sat at my kitchen table, the air between us still heavy but no longer sharp. It had shifted, less hostile, more tentative. Like two people testing the temperature of a conversation before jumping in. She asked me about my job, in vague terms, probably not because she didn't know, but because she'd never cared enough to ask before. I told her just enough to satisfy her curiosity: remote work, systems architecture, consulting contracts. She nodded along like she understood, though I could tell she didn't. That was okay. I saw the bakery, she said at one point. It's cute. They're good people. She smirked. You replaced Mom with croissants. I raised an eyebrow. Croissants are a lot more satisfying. She laughed. Genuinely. And I realized in that moment how rare it was to hear Elise laugh without performance. Without some kind of audience. We talked about little things after that. The kids. The weather. What our high school had done with its renovation fund. I didn't press her on her marriage. She didn't press me about my lack of one. It felt like walking a very narrow bridge. We both knew how far we could go before something broke. Before she left, she stood awkwardly at the door, coat in hand, and said, "You know, I didn't forget your birthday." I looked at her. You didn't text. Didn't call. She shifted uncomfortably. It didn't feel safe to. Not after the boutique thing started happening. Mom would have seen it. She would have known. So? Her voice dropped. You don't know what it's like with her. If you disappoint her, you get frozen out. She makes your life miserable. It's like, you either worship at the altar of her ego or you're out. I know exactly what it's like, I said. You just got away with less of it because she needed you to look perfect. That landed. She didn't deny it. She always said you were cold, she said after a moment. But I think you were just protecting yourself. I didn't say anything. There wasn't much left to add. I'm sorry, she said then. For not standing up for you. Ever. That hit me harder than anything else she could have said. Because I knew, deep down, Elise wasn't evil. She was just raised by someone who taught us love was earned through performance, and we happened to play different roles in the same exhausting script. She got the lead. There was background noise. And in some ways, we both suffered because of it. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But she said she'd be in touch. And this time, I believed her. After she left, I sat back down with my now cold tea and stared at the empty cup, wondering what I was supposed to feel. Victory? Closure? Regret? None of those came. Instead, I just felt still. Like something long festering had finally been lanced. Not healed. But it opened. I didn't hear from my mother directly after that. But a week later, my dad called. His voice was the same as always, flat, professional, like he was about to give me my quarterly taxes instead of an olive branch. I heard Elise stopped by, he said. She did. I see. Long pause. And then, your mother isn't well. I didn't reply. She's not sleeping. She's not eating much. Keep the blinds shut all day. Won't leave the house except for Sunday service. She has a doctor. And a therapist. Right? Silence. Of course not, I said quietly. That would require her to admit she doesn't have control. He didn't deny it. Isla, I'm not calling to ask for money or forgiveness. But I think you should know, she's convinced you destroyed her out of spite. I nearly laughed. I gave her a choice. She just didn't like that it came from me. You humiliated her. No, I corrected. She humiliated herself. I gave her a business opportunity. She threw it away rather than acknowledge I was capable of something she couldn't control or understand. He sighed. I don't think she'll ever forgive you. I felt that. Deeply. But it didn't rattle me. Then I guess we're finally even, I said. He didn't call back. For the next few weeks, I kept expecting another shoe to drop. A lawyer's letter. A dramatic family intervention. Maybe even a whisper campaign around town, the kind of Charleston gossip that simmers behind genteel smiles and front porch iced tea. But none of that happened. My family didn't explode. They just disappeared. And life moved on. I started spending more time at the bakery. Not as a landlord, but just a regular. I'd bring my laptop, work from the back table, and eventually, the owner started asking for business advice. We developed a rhythm. I even helped them build a website and a better point of sale system. One afternoon, Nora met me there. She noticed I was staring too long out the window. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." "About them?" I nodded. "What would you say to them if you could?" I didn't even hesitate. "Nothing." "Really?" "Really. I've already said enough. For once, I don't need their version of closure." Nora smiled at me, and for the first time in a long time, I believed I was building something real. Friendships. A life. Not on borrowed affection, not on conditional love. Just real. Then one evening in early spring, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. A letter. It was in my mother's handwriting. Crisp cursive. Pale pink stationery. I knew it instantly. She used the same kind for every holiday card she used to send out when we were kids. My breath caught as I opened it. The note inside was short. But it wasn't what I expected. The note inside read, "*I see now that I never truly saw you. I only saw what I expected. What I wanted. You didn't fit that mold, and I punished you for it. I've lost the boutique. I've lost control. And now, maybe I've lost you too. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed to say that I was wrong. Genevieve *, no mom. Just her name. Like I was a stranger receiving a business apology. It should have meant more. It should have hit me like a wave. It didn't. The words were too late and too clean. Too safe. It read like someone performing guilt, not someone living it. I folded the letter and tucked it in a drawer, not because it was precious, but because I knew one day I'd want to look at it, not for closure, but to remind myself how long it took her to say just that much. And because I was about to take the final step in this little tale. See, I hadn't stopped with the boutique. That building was my first commercial real estate investment, but it wasn't my last. Over the next 8 months, I bought 2 more properties. One just 2 doors down from Blush plus Fern's old spot. And one across the street, a small, neglected structure that had once housed a nail salon but had been vacant since the pandemic. Charleston's real estate market is brutal, yes, but I knew where to look. And I had capital. Quiet, clean capital. That last one? The vacant place? That's where I opened Cedar and Loam. My own shop. Not a boutique, not a revenge pop-up, but a design-forward co-op space for local women-owned businesses, handcrafted ceramics, plant design, small-batch perfumes, textile art, and artisan jewelry. Products that didn't scream wealth or exclusivity. Just beautiful things made by people who loved what they did. And I kept the rent fair. Affordable, even. Because I wasn't trying to squeeze people. I wasn't trying to become her. I hired people she would have never given a second look to, a young black woman who dropped out of college to pursue sculpture. A 55-year-old divorcee who made linen dresses on an antique Singer machine and sold them only through word of mouth. A Latina florist who'd been pushed out of her old lease in West Ashley by a corporate chain. These were my people now. Opening day, we had a line around the block. I didn't advertise. Didn't throw a press event. But the buzz traveled fast because the work was good and the space was honest. I gave people what my mother never gave me, belief, without strings. And the best part? From the windows of Cedar and Loam, you could see the old storefront where Blush plus Fern used to be. It had been empty since she moved out. No one had taken it up. Her name is still faintly visible beneath a layer of sun-bleached vinyl. A ghost of her empire, looking directly into mine. A few weeks after we opened, I caught sight of her. Genevieve. She was across the street, standing in front of the old shop. No makeup. Wearing sunglasses, but I knew it was her. She stood there for almost a full minute. Then she looked up. Saw the people inside Cedar and Loam. Saw me. Our eyes met. She didn't wave. Neither did I. But I smiled. It wasn't cruel. It was calm. And she looked away. That was it. No screaming. No showdown. Just the quiet weight of consequence. She turned and walked off. And I walked back inside, where the air smelled like jasmine and beeswax, where laughter echoed, where art lined the walls, and where, for the first time in my life, I was the center of something I'd built from the ground up. Not because I needed revenge, but because I finally realized I didn't need permission. And that was all the justice I ever needed.